Welcome back to Ride JBI. This is JB. Today we finished another suspension revalve on a set of 2022 Yamaha YZ250F KYB suspension. This suspension was revalved to our JBI suspension motocross spec. The front forks are the KYB SSS twin chamber spring fork on the Yamaha. These forks have been on the bike since 2006, and during those years the forks have seen a few revisions and updates over the years. So we could say there's different generations of this KYB SSS twin chamber spring fork. This 2022 Yamaha YZ250F features the latest generation of the KYB SSS twin chamber spring fork. What's been updated from the previous generations is the free piston design inside of the fork damping cartridge. The fork free piston sits right about here inside of this fork assembly. And the free piston is what applies pressure, or helps apply pressure, to the oil within the cartridge. That was updated in the design because the previous design from 2006 to 2017, or 2018 for this model bike, would commonly break, fracture, and crack. So the common upgrade for that was to replace it with a billet aluminum metal free piston. That doesn't really seem to be needed anymore on this generation of KYB forks. The damping cartridge was also increased by 1 millimeter. So the mid-valve piston, the mid-valve damping piston, that sits right about here inside of this fork assembly. That was increased 1 millimeter larger in diameter. So the actual damping cartridge was increased in diameter as well. Also, Yamaha changed the length of spring to 498 millimeters long. They did that in 2019. No, actually they did that a while ago, back in like 2014, I believe. But they played with spring length a few times throughout the years before settling on the 498 spring length. The reason for changing the length of spring inside of the fork is that changes the engagement point of the spring perch with the oil. So that can have a large influence over the feel of the forks. Anyways, beyond the technicals, the stock suspension is very competitive and well received and well liked. At Ride JBI, we often don't get a lot of Yamaha suspension because it works really well for the majority of riders. The times we do see Yamaha suspension is when a rider is outside of the standard setup range, and or they are much faster or maybe slower than the common rider. So for our fast pro riders, we most commonly just firm up the settings overall. So pretty much think maintain that really good Yamaha feel, but just kind of firm up the overall compression profile of the suspension so you get more hold up while riding. And then for some of our vet riders that want maximum comfort, we're actually soften up the compression just a little bit overall to get a little more comfortable of a ride. But again, the majority of riders, man, are really pleased with the stock Yamaha suspension. So we often don't see a lot of it unless you are really underriding it or overriding it. For this rider, it is a kid. He is on the lighter side, so we did some softer springs for him as well. The shock was revalved to our JBI suspension motocross spec to match the front forks. We also did a softer spring on this shock as well. We also changed out the bladder cap. That is this black piece here. The reason for that is the stock bladder cap utilizes a self-sealing rubber plug instead of this Schrader valve, which is underneath this valve cap. It's a very efficient and unique design, but oftentimes that rubber plug that's supposed to be self-sealing fails, and all your nitrogen leaks out of your shock, and then your shock performance is, well, you pretty much lose all of it. So at Ride JBI, we always change out any of those bladder caps from the self-sealing plug to a bladder cap with a straighter valve on it. Much easier to charge with gas, and also check it as well if you want to check how much pressure is still inside your shock. Again, this is a motocross setup that we did. Often people buy motocross bikes and they ride them for off-road, so we'll do a lot of tuning for that as well, meaning set up a moto bike for off-road riding. Here at Ride JBI, we have tested, tuned, and developed all sorts of riding settings for all different brands, bikes, and models. So if you'd like Ride JBI to do your suspension, please give us a call or send us an email. We'll talk about the year, make, and model bike that you have, what options are available, and which setup would work best for you. All JBI suspension services and parts can be found at ridejbi.com.